One of the earliest accounts of a dogman encounter in the United States goes back to the last 2 decades of the 1800s, out in what was known then as the Arizona Territory. Now, of course, when you mention the American Southwest in relation to this, some people automatically think of Native Americans, the Navajo in particular, which leads to the inevitable conversation about skinwalkers. But this story has nothing to do with skinwalkers or shape-shifting or any of the other subjects that sometimes get dragged down into the dogman discussion. Now, some of you have heard about some of the things that went down in Tombstone, Arizona. That's right. What I want to tell you about happened around the time that Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, and Doc Holliday were establishing themselves as permanent historical fixtures of what we now call the Old West. But it was another man, a man named William Arnett, now largely obscured by time, who was engaged in exploits no less exciting. Arnett was a Texan and was known to have done a stint as a ranger. But he had, over a period of time, worked as an Army scout, bounty hunter, and was known to be an expert tracker. It was this reputation that brought him to the Arizona Territory, Cochise County to be precise. You see, between Nugent's Pass and Bisbee, there were more than 24 ranches that had been experiencing what at the time was being called strange goings-on. This included sheep, chickens, and cattle being attacked in the middle of the night and eaten, in whole or in part. Of course, this was initially attributed to coyotes, but the severity of the mutilation suggested a larger predator, a much larger predator. But more than that, there were even reports of a strange creature skulking around the outskirts of many of these ranches, just as dusk fell. It was described as a wolf as big as a buffalo, a wolf that could stand up on 2 legs and walk like a man. Now, the men who were able to catch a glimpse of the creature were only ever able to get off a few random shots at it until it scrambled out of sight. The last ranch to be struck was the Gadsden place near Packard, just west of Bisbee. The scene was the same as all the rest. Cattle gutted, ripped, mutilated, and half-eaten. The ranch foreman, a man named Russell, described his discovery as blood and guts scattered out over 1.5 acres of the property. After that, several of the largest ranch owners met and agreed to bring Arnett in. He was, they figured, their best hope. Besides, how much longer would it be before whatever it was turned its attention to people? William Arnett, having received the urgent telegram, replied, gathered the necessary supplies, and headed south. Upon his arrival, Arnett met with a group of the larger ranch owners, with Benton Gadsden at the lead. The ranchers brought him up to speed on exactly what had been taking place, including dates, times, weather conditions, and so forth. They all knew that by reputation, Arnett was a quick study and in short order would be out and after the monster wolf. Gadsden provided Arnett with lodgings, and that first night, several of the men dined at his table. You see, Gadsden had started the ranch after coming out west from Ohio after the surrender of General Lee. Since then, he built it up to one of the largest ranches in the territory. He was an honest and well-respected man, and when something troubled and upset him, it was troubling and upsetting for everyone, especially the other ranchers. The next 2 days and nights were uneventful, at least according to Arnett. He spent most of that time out scouting around the area, including the locations of reported sightings of the creature. It was said that at the time he didn't talk much, just a nod and an occasional word in morning or evening greeting, but was seen regularly writing in what looked to be a leather-bound journal. Nobody at that time, nor for years, decades after, had the faintest idea about the contents of the pages within. The sun rose and shone brightly on the 3rd day, and things seemed very much as they had been on the previous 2 days. Arnett was out and about, having been seen at various points by the ranch hands along Rattlesnake Pass, Whitby Spring, Corbin's Trail, and others. However, later on, as the sun set beneath the distant hills, all hell broke loose. It started with barking dogs kicking up a ruckus and the sound of a horse, most assumed to be Arnett, tearing ass through a meadow. Then, somewhere out in the darkness, a terrible howl. Behind that was the distinctive sound of Arnett's Sharp's 1874 rifle. The night air began to fill with the anger and fury of the chase and the hunt. Some of the men, the ranch hands, peered out in the night from lantern-lit windows, the yellowish-orange haze being visible at a distance. Others, with a few more grains of courage, had taken lanterns out to the perimeter fences, thinking they might see something of the action. What would later be known as the general melee seemed to go on and on through the night, but in truth, it was probably no more than about 20 minutes. The air was choked with the smell of oil and smoke, dust, wood, and leather. Finally, things fell silent. Then the men could hear the sound of what must have been Arnett coming back across the meadow on horseback. They started gathering around as he rode up. "The thing is done," Arnett said. "Come and see." The men scrambled out behind Arnett's horse, back down to the meadow with the amber glow of more than a dozen lanterns leading the way. Further down, in the midst of the high grass, they saw a monstrous form lying dead on the ground. It seemed as though the rumors were true. A wolf, big as a buffalo, black as midnight, that could walk on two legs. Even in the darkness, the men could see the different points at which Arnett's shots had successfully struck home. Then Arnett looked at the men, gave a slight nod, and rode off. No one rightly knows what the bounty was on the creature. Some say $5,000 or $10,000. Hell, there were reports in the tombstone epitaph that it was as high as $25,000. All I can report with certainty is that at least half of his bounty was paid in gold. Reports and sightings of Arnett get kind of sketchy after that. A lot of rumors and whispering which swirled up into folklore. Stories about some weird lizard thing he took out after down in Louisiana Bayou country. There was some other yarn about him mixing it up with a Navajo shaman and a handful of others, including a run-in with the Ku Klux Klan in Georgia. But those have to wait for another time. Suffice it to say, William Arnett is a true hero of what we now call the Old West, although his exploits, as I said, carried him to nearly all points of the compass. And as we know now, that included going head-to-head with a ravenous, vicious dogman.